We are conducting this evening's meeting in a virtual setting. Council members and staff are participating from remote locations. Chamber is currently closed to the public. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting live this evening on Spectrum Channel 3 and 22, AT&T Uverse Channel 99, and/or El Segundo TV at youtube.com. Or they may access remotely via Zoom from an electronic device of choice. The meeting information for joining is outlined on tonight's agenda. Please remember to mute your mics. This is for the council members when not speaking, and council members if making a motion or a second on a motion, please do so using your last name in order for the clerk to hear and report correctly. We're going to start with the invocation tonight being provided by our city clerk, Tracy Weaver, and then we're going to have council member Giroux lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Madam Clerk, please.
Yes, and in honor of MLK Day yesterday, Martin Luther King, I am going to quote him this evening. On some positions, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must take it because conscience tells him it is right. It's from a speech on February 6, 1968 in Washington, D.C. Sorry about my dogs. They probably heard a siren.
Great selection. Thank you. Councilmember Giroux.
Please rise and face a flag. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. All right, now we have roll call. Madam City Clerk, will you please take roll call?
Council member Giroux?
Here.
Council member Nickel?
Here.
Council member Persek?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel?
Here.
And Mayor Boyles?
Here.
All there.
Thank you. Okay, now's the time for public communication. If there are folks that are on the Zoom call that would like to speak, please click the hand icon and the host will announce your name when it's your turn to speak. If you're dialing from a phone, you'll need to press *9, which will raise the icon hand, and *6 to unmute. And we'll give that a minute here and see if anyone would like to speak during public comments.
Okay, so far I do not see anyone raising their hand.
Okay. We'll check back after I ask this next question. Madam Clerk, have you received any written public comments?
We have not.
Okay, thanks. Anything, Mona, on the screen?
No.
Okay, that concludes public communications. Next up, special presentation. We're really excited to have some special guests on our Zoom call this evening for our council meeting. I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem, who's going to read some exciting news and a commendation. Chris, take it away.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Tonight we have a commendation for the United States Space Force and our guest, Colonel Beers. Whereas the U.S. Space Force is a new branch of the armed forces that was established on December 20th, 2019, with the enactment of the Fiscal Year 2020 National Defense Authorization Act, and currently has around 16,000 individuals assigned to the U.S. Space Force, which is now an option given to Air Force cadets at the Air Force Academy and for recruits during their enlistment process. And whereas the primary mission of the U.S. Space Force, as directed by Congress, is to maintain, protect, and expand the U.S. fleet of advanced military satellites that form the backbone of U.S. global military operations. And whereas the U.S. Space Force was established within the Department of the Air Force, meaning the Secretary of the Air Force has responsibility for the USSF under the guidance of the Secretary of Defense. Additionally, a four-star general as the Chief of Space Operations serves as the senior military member of the USSF. And whereas the Space and Missile Systems Center, located at Los Angeles Air Force Base in El Segundo, California, serves as the premier center of technical excellence for developing, acquiring, fielding, launching, and sustaining military space systems, SMC supports 200,000 total force and joint military civilian employees, retirees, and families in the Los Angeles area, and has an economic impact of $2.5 billion with 19.4 thousand total jobs created. SMC's mission is to deliver resilient, affordable, and sustainable space capabilities, and is responsible for on-orbit checkout, test, sustainment, and maintenance of military satellite constellations and other Department of Defense space systems. And whereas SMC established the second iteration of the Space Enterprise Consortium, authorizing up to $12 billion for space-related Department of Defense prototype projects over a 10-year period. Since its inception in 2017, membership has grown to 441 business, academia, and industry partners and has awarded 80 prototype efforts. Additionally, Los Angeles Air Force Base is now the first ever space-focused innovation hub with a stand-up of SpaceWorks, where acquisition stakeholders will match technologies to opportunities for integration. Now, therefore, the mayor and members of the City Council of the City of El Segundo, California, hereby thank our local members of the U.S. Space Force and recognize and celebrate the U.S. Space Force's first birthday. Happy birthday, Space Force.
My turn.
Colonel Beers, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. From the men and women at the Space and Missile Systems Center and the 61st Air Base Group at Los Angeles Air Force Base, I'd like to thank our incredible community partners from the City of El Segundo for honoring the United States Space Force in this way. We could not safeguard our nation's space capabilities and take care of our airmen and guardians without your tireless effort and support. Thank you very much. We are very excited to say that over 500 of our SMC personnel were selected to transfer from the U.S. Air Force to the United States Space Force. And as you were talking about some of the technologies, since the Space Force stood up, we have had 7 successful Space Force launches during its first year. So we are, again, excited to have the city as one of our partners, and thank you for the for this recognition. We appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Colonel Beers. Thank you for being on. It's an honor to have you and your entire organization in our town. So thank you for being on tonight. All right, and Mayor Pro Tem, thank you for commendation. Well done. We are going to move on to, well, let's see here. Oh, we've got a COVID-19 update by Chief Don. There you are. Chief, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Mayor, and Happy New Year to you and this members of City Council and to the community. Always tough acts to follow, but following the Space Force is definitely a first for me. I'm going to give a presentation. I'm going to share my screen in a moment here. I'm going to give some limited health data. And I know that we've all been hearing the news, so I want to go quickly over the health information. I want to spend a majority of the presentation talking about vaccines and where we are with COVID-19 vaccinations. And then I'd like to just take a quick moment and acknowledge some of the volunteer efforts that have occurred since we've stood up our all-hazard incident management team. And I'm assuming that you can see the screen before you. So again, this is going to be real brief, and I know that we've seen this regularly. We've seen the news. We hear all of the information on COVID-19. We're certainly in a surge capacity. Actually, United States data is a little stale. They haven't refreshed their page for 2 days. We now know that we've surpassed 400,000 deaths in the United States due to COVID. And in California, we're approaching 3 million cases. Los Angeles County, we've now surpassed 1 million cases with 14,000 deaths. Hospitalizations continue to be very high. ICU bed availability continues to be high. Those 3 S's that I've spoken about for hospital surge, which is space, meaning hospital beds, staff, nurses, doctors, and stuff, which is supplies like oxygen, are all still very stretched right now. We're still seeing a lot of issues at the hospitals that we're working through. And then locally here in El Segundo, we've much like the state and the county, particularly the county of Los Angeles, that we've seen this post-holiday increase with 529 cases. 129 are active within the last 2 weeks. And then, of course, we've seen an increase of 2 additional deaths for a total of 3. Real quickly, I wanted to show a graph that illustrates where we are in locally. Back in July, we had plateaued for several months through October. And then following the Halloween, certainly Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, we've seen a sharp increase. And the last 2 months, it's been over a 200% increase in our local cases. And so we'll continue to advocate for those things to keep our members and our community safe, our employees safe, the removing yourself from confined spaces, making sure that you maintain social distancing, wearing face covers whenever in the presence of someone else within 6 feet. And then certainly regular hand washing is going to be important. So again, I don't want to belabor the health data because we've been hearing a lot about that. I want to talk about the vaccination process, where we are locally, where we are within the County of Los Angeles, and those efforts that we've been doing here at the El Segundo Fire Department. For those that don't know, the county is following the state, which is following CDC's recommendation of a phased vaccination priority. And so in Los Angeles County, they've identified in phase 1, 3 parts. We're in phase 1A, which is getting vaccinations in the arms of healthcare workers and residents of long-term care facilities. That process is underway now. We'll be shortly pivoting to phase 1B, which is frontline essential workers and people aged 65 or older. In that frontline essential worker, we'll start to see our police officers and other essential employees be given vaccination opportunities. And on Monday, the Board of Supervisors lowered the age of availability in phase 1B from 75 to 65. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment in terms of opportunities for our community members to take advantage of that. Phase 1C would be those folks that are aged 50 to 64 or people aged 16 to 19 with underlying health conditions and other essential workers, those employees that are in wastewater positions or that have regular contact with the public would fall under this category. And right now, LA County is looking at March or April. That said, locally, this is a real quick data. I'll share with you the vaccination rollout from the federal government, Operation Warp Speed, went really well, and there was quite a lot of vaccines that were pushed out. What we have noticed, though, is that there's been a lack of communication and coordination with getting the actual vaccinations locally here throughout Los Angeles County through those phased approaches. And so there's several efforts that have been taken in the County of Los Angeles, which I'll talk about. That said, what we're seeing is about a 30 to 40% utilization of the vaccines that have been given to the state of California. And we definitely need to work better at that. We need to work a lot harder at the county and at the local levels to advocate for the vaccine administration and getting those shots in the arm. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing here in El Segundo. Working with the Los Angeles Area Fire Chiefs Association, we partnered with LA County Emergency Medical Services Agency and the LA County Public Health, and we broke the county into 3 regional sectors. One of the sectors is the beach region, and El Segundo Fire Station 32 is identified as a point of distribution. So we're actually able to receive and redistribute the vaccination through LA County Public Health. And we've been identified and approved for that through the state process. We've also been approved as a point of vaccination or a POV, where we could have our trained personnel give the vaccinations that have been redistributed to Fire Station 32. So we continue to work with LA County Public Health and the EMS agency to get the rollout of vaccines. To date, we've been successful administering the first of 2 doses to 60 personnel. Most of these are firefighters and other frontline employees, law enforcement. We were able to get a few of our law partners in that first batch. The second dose, which is within 28 to 32 days, will be administered starting next week on the 25th, 26th, and 28th. So we'll have 60 of our employees with the 2 doses of the vaccine. And 7 days after that, utilizing the Moderna vaccine, they'll have 95% immunity towards the vaccine or towards the COVID vector moving forward. We're also coordinating an additional 60 makeup vaccines for those employees that missed the first phase rollout. And we've been asked by the EMS agency to support our partners at the Chevron, Boeing, and Raytheon fire departments. So that'll be part of that phased rollout. We're looking to do that in the beginning to middle of February. We're also coordinating with our law partners, with Chief Wellen and his team, in ordering 100 vaccines for El Segundo Police Department. We're looking to get the police officers vaccinated. We're identifying the second week of February will be the date that we'll receive those. And we've got a team that's established that will work on registering all of our employees through the state website, CalVax, and then coordinating the vaccinations at Fire Station 2. And then lastly, I've been personally strongly advocating for 100 vaccines for our Park Vista residents. I've been in communication with public health and the EMS agency, and I'll continue to advocate strongly for those vaccines for our Park Vista residents. In my opinion, I would consider them to be similar to a skilled nursing facility in terms of the age of the population there and the congruent living. I think that we should be recognized for that. As of yet, I've yet to get that vaccines, but I will tell the council and the community that I will continue to work hard to get that identified. So we have a point of redistribution and a point of vaccination. We have a system in place where it's worked really smoothly in the first dose of 60 vaccines, where the vaccines have been delivered. We've been able to put them in the freezer. We've been able to thaw them. We've been able to administer them. We're tracking every patient. We're watching them for medical signs 30 minutes after. It's a really well organized and coordinated system. And I would really hope that we can advocate to have this continue on as we look to continue our vaccination processes for the phased 1B and 1C with that hope in mind. If not, as of today, in fact, there's updated information from LA County Public Health of these super sites. And you'll start to see more information. We'll make sure that we coordinate this and put this on the city's website for our community members. On Monday, the LA County Board of Supervisors identified age 65 and under as being a priority in the phased response. They said that as early as this Thursday, they could have availability for the vaccinations at these super sites. These are run by LA County Public Health. They're identified at the Forum in Inglewood, the Pomona Fairplex, Magic Mountain, Cal State Northridge, and the LA County Office of Education in Norwalk. And each of those sites is established to vaccinate up to 4,000 individuals per day, with, again, that first rollout being continuation of the healthcare workers and now those age 65 and above. There are a couple of websites. I went on those websites today, and although, quite frankly, the links get broken, I think there's a high usage right now. If you go to publichealth.lacounty.gov, on the homepage, there'll be a link for vaccinations for age 65. You could then scroll down. You have to verify through proof of residency in Los Angeles County and age of 65 or older. And once you do that, you could get an appointment at the vaccination sites that are listed above here. You could also go directly to the calvax.org and /clinic. And the last opportunity, if you don't have computer access, is you can call 833-540-0473. And again, we'll put this information on the city's website and continue to push it out. This is yet another opportunity for those members that are over 65 to try to get the vaccinations. We've also seen that there are clinics throughout Los Angeles County. For instance, the Ralphs here in El Segundo had a clinic and pretty quickly filled up with their vaccination requests. And so it's going to be mindful for our residents to stay close to that information and probably stay on the computer on a regular basis to try to get an appointment. All the while, our city will continue to advocate for utilizing our point of redistribution and a point of inoculation. I'll finish by just identifying the work that's still being done in the incident management team. We've got the full team that's working hard, and I'd really like to identify the fact that to date, as of January 10th, we have 1,668 hours that have been donated. That includes folks at the Incident Command Center, Incident Command Post, members from Team Rubicon, Boeing, and Police Department volunteers. And then we had a tremendous support with our Park Vista phone tree that was taking place. And then, of course, the Rotary Club that was very instrumental in helping us out. And I just want to point out that even through this pandemic and the difficult times, having the volunteers assist with us is really meaningful, and it demonstrates why El Segundo is such a unique and special community. And with that, sir, I'll open up to questions related to the data or vaccinations.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions or comments from council? I'm not seeing any. No, I don't think so, Chief.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Encouraging about the vaccines. Okay, item A, consideration of a motion to read all ordinances and resolutions on the agenda by title only. Stating your last name, would someone like to make a motion to read all ordinances and resolutions by title only?
Giroux, so moved.
Thank you, sir.
First, second.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, Madam Clerk?
Yeah, Councilmember Giroux,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yeah.
And Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
Okay, pass 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, we're on to the consent calendar. And I'm going to ask council members if there are any polls. Yes.
I'd like to,
Councilmember Giroux.
sorry, I'd like to pull number 8.
Number 8. Okay, noted. Thank you. Okay, it looks like that's it. Okay, do I have a motion to approve items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, and 11?
So moved. Nickel.
Okay, great.
Giroux, second.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Clerk,
Yes.
vote please.
Councilmember Giroux,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Aye.
And Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
Okay, they all passed except for 8.
Okay, Councilmember Drew, would you mind reading number 8, please?
Yes, is the Authorize City Manager to execute an amendment with Prosum Technology Services to increase the contract amount by $350,000 for a total contract amount of $2,150,000. And I guess the question I have for you, Mr. Mitnick, and I don't know if Mr. Mallory is on, is can you give a little context to this? Is this more than what was approved? I know this is way before I was even on council, so I'm just trying to get a little context on it, but it seems like a big amount. So what is it that this is for?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Council Member. Bottom line, this item is to increase contract capacity. Thank you to this council for approving my professional services budget for 2021. However, this particular contract expires, I believe, in May, and I no longer have funds that are available in this contract. So we look at the process as 2 different processes. One is budget management, which you have already approved the budget for me to spend the actual funds. And then contract capacity is the vehicle by which I spend the funds. So money has already been appropriated for this. It's contained in my 2021 budget, but I do not have a contract vehicle to spend the money.
So this is not, so I guess the grand total of 2.1 is what the budget was.
No, excuse me. This is a multi-year contract. That 2.1 goes back to 2017.
Okay.
Sometimes with IT projects, I get a better discount if we execute a multi-year contract, right? So my contracts don't necessarily align with my budget year. So sometimes before the budget year is over, I may come back to renew a contract, right? And if I renew it for a couple of years, you won't see me again asking for contract capacity, but you'll see me every single year asking for budget fulfillment. So the funds have been appropriated. This is just a contract vehicle to spend the money that you've already allocated for 2021.
Okay, I'll defer to my fellow council members. I know this is something that was done before me. So does it all make sense? Is it all what we thought it was going to be?
I'll speak.
Sorry, I was on mute. I think I saw
we thought it was going to be
first, then Chris,
So-
over to you.
I mean, Charles, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is really to help us. These are the project manager contractors that we hire to help us bring on projects like we did for the new website. And then we're working on the new building and planning system, which is a big project that's in the process as currently today. So this is really to fund or to the contracts for the contract, the operation managers, the person that's actually helping us implement these new projects, correct?
Yes, that is correct. We not only use them for project managers, but we also use them to supplement staff if I have a particular problem that I need to solve and I don't have the skill set on staff. We would actually hire, a database administrator if I didn't have one, or we'd hire a security person if I didn't have one. So you're absolutely right, Councilmember Persek. It is for the project managers to move the projects forward, as well as to keep some capacity available if I have a technical problem that I need to bring on additional resources for. And again, it is all part of the appropriation and part of the budget of the 2021 contract. 2021 budget, right? So I will not go over the 2021 budget. This is just the vehicle by which we spend the money.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, did you want to chime in too?
I was only going to say, in effect, what Charles and Carol both did. That this is money that we had allocated before, knowing that there wasn't a contract to append it for, but knowing the approximate value of the contract. So it's out there, and these by contracting it out in this manner, we will have these posts won't be here forever, and these tasks won't be here forever. So this money just pens it while we need the work done. It's
Gotcha.
not new money.
Okay. Then move to approve.
Okay, great. Do we have a
Persek, second.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, would you please do a voice vote?
Councilmember Giroux,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol,
Aye.
Councilmember Persek,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel,
Aye.
and Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
Okay, number 8 passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Great. Great. Thanks, Lance. Thanks, Charles.
Oops. Hold on. Sorry, Drew.
That's okay.
That was my fault.
Are we back on?
You are
Okay.
back on.
Let's see, where was I? Item 12, adopt a resolution approving a proposed change of the city's CDBG fiscal year 2020-21 program. The change temporarily cancels the implementation of CDBG project 602062-19, Jocelyn Center Americans with Disabilities Act, compliant restrooms facilities improvement project, and alternatively reappropriates funds totaling $122,361 to a new fiscal year 2020-2021 CDBG project entitled City Hall ADA Restroom Facilities Improvement Project, and authorizes the city manager to execute all contracts in a form approved by the city attorney with the Los Angeles County Development Authority, LACDA. This is a time and place hereto fixed for a public hearing regarding the project that I just mentioned, that item. City Clerk, was proper notice of the hearing given in a timely manner?
Yes, it was.
Excellent. Has any written communication been received regarding this public hearing?
It has not.
Thank you. Mr. Mitnick, public hearing is now open. Who's going to make the presentation?
Elias Sassoon, Public Works Director. He will do that.
Great.
Can you see me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good. Hi, good evening and Happy New Year, members of the City Council and Mayor. Basically, what is before you is paperwork that is required for us to execute before we could reassign these funds to improve the city hall bathrooms, and the reason we are doing that is basically a priority based on priority need. That doesn't mean by any means that we are going to not worry about Jocelyn Center. In fact, this is not going to cause any delay regarding the Jocelyn Center ADA requirements that we are pursuing to do. It just provides the funding that we need at this time for improvements at the City Hall. And I'd be more than happy to answer any more questions that any of you may have at this time.
Okay, I know you have a consultant online, but I think that's in case there's some questions. Did you want Gail to, Tina Gall? No? Anyway, let's go to Councilman Nickel. He raised his hand.
Mr. Sassoon, thank you. I guess my main question is, when you say it doesn't delay Jocelyn Center's bathrooms being taken care of, my question to you is, how did City Hall become more of a priority than Jocelyn Center in this sense?
Good question. So we've got two projects that are going on City Hall. The first one is replacing of the existing windows, and that project is already being advertised, and we are really looking forward to come back to City Hall in March for the award. The other project that we have is remodeling of our entrance to the Public Works and Development Services Department. And both of these projects we cannot do unless we take care of the ADA restroom issues with City Hall. With respect to Jocelyn Center, as the members of the City Council know, we put out an RFP, which is already out, for firms to submit a proposal for looking at all the needs we have on our facilities at the Rec Park, which includes the Jocelyn Center, including ADA needs, which, by the way, it goes beyond and above of the building itself. When we talk about ADA compatibility at Jocelyn Center, we not only dealing with the ADA within the restrooms, but also outside of the building. That also needs to be looked at. So basically, with this new RFP that we have out for the rec center, we are going to look at all the requirements for all the buildings, including ADA on all the buildings. So that wheel is already in motion. So we already have, in a way, started looking at Jocelyn Center, and for that matter, all the other facilities and the ADA requirements is one part of that.
That was a really long answer to maybe it was a bad question on my part or a poor question. Let me try to rephrase. If I remember correctly, when we look at the CDBG programs for each year, we speak about priorities of those programs. And I believe we spoke at length about the priorities of City Hall and how important it was. I can't speak for the rest of my fellow council members, but I can speak for myself of how important it was that we spend money out in the community where our residents are going to benefit from it before we spend money inside our walls at City Hall. I read in the report everything that you just said, that having to do those bathrooms while doing these other upgrades at City Hall have to happen simultaneously. But if we're going to look at facility upgrades and all ADA at Rec Park, the bathrooms at the Joslin Center will not be done for a very long time. Because when you start looking at the clubhouse building and the checkout building, you know, I feel like there are plenty of reasons and lots of dollar reasons why Rec Park in and of itself is a behemoth in regards to how much money it's going to cost to bring it completely to today's ADA standards. So I feel like my question was directed in the sense of, are there piles on your desk? And because City Hall has things going on, we're now prioritizing this versus council's desire to prioritize work at the Joslin Center.
Well, the Joslin Center and other facilities are also a high priority for us. And the process starts with this RFP that is out. And after we receive that, we're going to be looking at that. We're going to be doing the cost analysis, and we will be appropriating funds to take care of that. As it says on the staff report, the money that is needed for just Joslin Center, it may be as much as $500,000. So the allocations that we have from CDBG funds are not going to be sufficient to do those needed improvements. So what basically I am committing to you is, after the RFP is received and we do know the extent of the improvements that are needed in all those facilities, including Joslin Center, we will come back to City Council, and we will brief the City Council about the needs, about the costs, about the priorities, and they're all going to get done. I just want to assure you, we are going to do that. It's just that the funding that we get from CDBG is about $60,000 a year, roughly, and that will not be sufficient to do all those improvements. So some of those improvements, most of them, would have to be done by other source of funding, and we are committed to do that.
Mr. Mayor, I don't mean to hog the time. Mr. Sassoon, last question. If that money, that $58,948 from the program year 2019-2020, if those funds are not used now, do they go away, or can we bank them for use later?
No, sir, it does not go away. The way it works, CDBG funds, we are able to bank them for 2 years, possibly maybe 3 years. But after 3 years, I think there is a very special procedure set in place to bank them beyond and about 3 years. And Tina could elaborate on that. But based on my experience, we typically cannot bank the funds more than 2 years. And Tina, would you mind if you elaborate on the answer to the question?
No, thank you. I will. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Tina Gall. I'm the Community Development Block Grant Consultant for the City of El Segundo. In response to Councilmember Nichols' question, CDBG funds actually are required to be expended on an annual basis. However, any city that does accumulate funds beyond an annual period will be required to expend funds more rapidly and meet certain deadlines. And if those deadlines are not met, then we will have to provide a response to the pass-through agency, which is the Los Angeles County Development Authority, as to the stagnation of expenditure of funds. But in general, I believe we can at least have funds available for 2 consecutive years, but not in excess of 3 years. Right. So there is always that priority to spend funds as quickly as possible. And that was one of the benefits of reappropriating our CDBG funds currently to the main city hall lobby restroom improvements so that we could expend those funds as early as this summer.
Thank you for your answer. Mr. Mayor, last point, and then I'll give up the conch here. I fear the next 12 months of our jobs here in regards to the fiscal implications that we're going to face and the consequences of COVID-19 on our finances. And so my fear, Mr. Mitnick, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Sassoon, is if these funds get moved from Park Vista, where they were meant to be spent, onto City Hall, we may not have the money to do anything at Park Vista for quite some time, and Rec Park. That is my concern, and that's why I'm asking the questions I'm asking. Thank you.
Scott, I think you meant Jocelyn Center. You said Park
Jocelyn
Vista.
Center, that's what I meant to say. I apologize.
That could be quickly misinterpreted out there. Yeah, I think, Scott, I share your concern. I don't see any of the council members. I do have one quick thought, which is, it sounds like Mr. Sassoon is definitely open to prioritizing the Jocelyn Center bathrooms. And it sounds like we just have to make up $60-something thousand to make that happen. If it's 500,000, that's really just a drop in the bucket. So we're gonna have to find those funds anyway. And to your point, Councilman Nickel, we have a lot of work to do in all capital improvement projects, including Rec Park. And given the economic reality that we're gonna be faced with, including the structural deficit that we had leading into this pre-COVID, mostly because of our pension obligations, we're gonna have a difficult job regardless. And so I hear your concerns. Are you comfortable moving forward, Scott?
I believe Mr. Pimentel has a question, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Mayor Protem, go ahead. Yeah, please.
Well, I joined Councilmember Nickel on this, in that, it was no small matter of commitment when the council decided to allocate funds for these restrooms, because we knew that it was in a facility that likely at some point would need to be entirely renovated. And so we had allocated money for this, knowing that in the scope of all the things that would need to be done to Rec Park, this is a highly utilized facility and a high demand and a real point of liability for the city. So I think that we don't really take, well, I will say, even when we do the entire assessment for all of our park facilities, and we triage which ones are going to get serviced when, likely we're still going to want these bathrooms done, even if it's for a building that's going to be blown up in 5 years. These restrooms are a gaping requirement for us. So I think my question at the end of that soliloquy here is do you have a prognosis of when in the what calendar year we could see these restrooms actually addressed?
We probably, if the city council desires, we could speed up the process of looking at the Jocelyn Center as early as this summer and start getting the design as to what exactly needs to be done with the following year for the funds to be included in the proposed CIP programs for implementation. We could do that. But the strategy is to look at all the facilities at the rec center and prioritize all the needed improvements as that RFP responses come in, and we look at all the facilities. But if it is the desire of the city council to focus on the Jocelyn Center, we could do that too.
Well, I would only follow with and I know that this is one of those welcome to El Segundo sort of moments. These restrooms have been kicked down the road for an entire generation of users, because we know that there's onerous plumbing issues that go with redoing this. So our commitment to jump into this was not taken lightly and was taken with the full understanding that it is, in terms of value per dollar, we are putting a Band-Aid on something that is not a long-term solution. But it has been, I don't know, I guess I would defer to some people who've been here longer, how long we've been kicking this around. Since the first council meeting I think I ever attended, it was on the agenda.
Right. So we are working on the CIP projects, the list of items on the CIP for this coming fiscal year. And I'd be more than happy to include that again. As
Can I, Elias, Scott wants, I know Scott's begging to talk, but before he does, we still have not done anything about the clubhouse bathrooms.
Yeah.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay, clubhouse is way more utilized than Jocelyn Center. I mean, I'm sure there's data that will validate that. And granted, Jocelyn is geared mostly towards elderly and senior, but you've got elderly, you've got young, you've got El Segundo Street Co-op, you've got a lot of people using that clubhouse too. So I would just caution us not to jump to a Band-Aid solution without knowing really what is going to prove to be the best use of our funds, knowing that we have such limited funds ahead of us. So I'd hate for us to jump the gun because we've got gaping holes all throughout Rec Park and the city. And hold on, Scott Mitnick and then Scott Nickel and then Tracy. Tracy, are we ahead of ourselves? Is that why you're
Yeah, I'm sorry, but technically council shouldn't be discussing this until after they ask the public if they have any questions. And then you're going to close the public hearing and then you get to talk.
Thank you. All right. Do we have anyone that would like to, is there anyone on the line that would like to share their comments?
No one is raising their hand.
We'll give a minute. In the meantime, Madam Clerk, have you received any written public communications?
I have not.
Great. Thanks. Mona, anyone yet?
No.
Okay. If you see someone come on, would you let us know? Just chime in.
Yes.
And in the meantime, Mr. Mitnick.
No, please close public hearing and then you can continue. Sorry.
Okay. If he's providing information only, Tracy, he can still speak, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Scott.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to help clarify. And I'm sorry it wasn't in the written document. Just as a reminder, with respect to the rec park or recreation park property, council has appropriated $800,000. And remember, we were directed to do a master plan update to take a look at the capital needs, not just with Jocelyn, the senior center, but also with the restrooms throughout the rec park facility over by the baseball field, by the clubhouse and by the checkout building, as well as to take a look at the skate park and the teen center. So we are looking at the master plan for that. So we do have at least $800,000, and Joe Lilio can provide us with the current dollar amount of that is available. We have that we're looking at master planning the whole area. This is not a trade-off if you use the ADA money for city hall restrooms. That doesn't mean the Jocelyn restrooms don't get done, not at all. It's just saying, hey, we have this money, we have to spend it, we're going to lose it eventually, might as well use it for an ADA compliant project, which is the spirit of what it was intended for. But we are still totally committed to looking at all the rec park needs, and the restrooms throughout rec park are in dire need of upgrading. We know that. You've made that clear. You've had this discussion, you've given me direction to take a look at that. So that's how all these pieces are put together. It's not take it from one and give to the other. No, we're still committed to taking care of all these projects.
Thank you, Mr. Mendick. All right, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So Drew, can I just name a couple names and make sure? I see someone by the name of Carl. Does this person want to speak? Or there is a Michelle or a Mark? I'm not seeing.
They would raise their hand right on Zoom or press star.
So it's either they raise their hand or they do the *9 if they're calling in by phone, but they seem to be on by a computer.
Okay, I think we're in the clear then. Okay, colleagues, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Nichols, so moved.
Thank you, sir.
Giroux, second.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, would you please take a voice vote?
Councilmember Giroux?
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel?
Aye.
Councilmember Perstack?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel?
Aye.
And Mayor Boyles?
Yes. Okay, now on to council discussion. Thanks, Tracy.
Talk away.
I think Councilman Nickel had his hand up last, I believe. So Scott, we'll go back to you.
You said something and I Mark Hensley stopped me at some point if I say something I'm not supposed to say because my name was not on a ping pong ball. But correct me if I'm wrong, an RFQ has gone out for the City Hall property. And yet here it is, we're about to award how much money, Mr. Mitnick, for windows? And then we're gonna remodel a bathroom in a building that ultimately has a request for proposal out on it.
Yeah, that's
just this. If that was my house, and I was putting out for bid to remodel the entire thing potentially, I would not be changing the windows and remodeling the bathrooms right before potentially tearing the entire thing down.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, you've discussed and debated this, that exact point, and the timing to repurpose City Hall could be 5 to 10 years down the road, depending how fast it goes and how involved and how complicated it is. But the council has discussed this. You reached a conclusion, and we are moving forward on that. Yeah, I understand the perception of it, but this is going to be a working City Hall for several years to come. And we have no idea what ends up on this site. Maybe the City Hall piece here stays here and the development goes around it. We have severe problems with this building. We talked about it. You have ADA compliance issues. I don't want to rattle off all the things. You already know it. This is a working office. You've made the commitment to do that. So, yeah, again, I'm.
That's okay. Thanks, Scott.
It's not a trade-off with the Jocelyn Center in this. And if you're uncomfortable using the ADA money, I would recommend we just take it out of the general fund reserves and not worry about it, or we'll find the money somewhere else. Then we'll figure out how to spend the CDBG money on another project.
Okay, any other, let's see, Councilor Giroux, Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel, Councilor Perstuck, any other comments? Yes, Carol.
Yeah, so I'm going to echo what Councilmember Nichols was mentioning. I recollect that we approved the windows. I just don't recollect that we approved the remodeling of the public works area, of the planning area. I didn't think that was part of the window improvement. So I just was kind of interested. I just kind of wanted to discuss that because I believe, I know that Scott, that you mentioned, Scott Nick, that you said that, we could be 5 years down the line before we do a major remodel, but that can also be said about the Joslin Center. So I'm just kind of concerned, like I know we approved the windows. I just didn't think we had approved the secondary piece, which is the remodel of the you mentioned there was a secondary piece, which is I think Elias had mentioned it.
Right.
I think it's the entrance area.
Well, no, that's been in the works for several years. That's the planning counter.
The question is do we want to move forward? I mean, is the planning counter important at this juncture, given that our funds are limited and the Joslins and the rec park is a high priority for us?
You know what? We have all these things that have been in the works for a very long time, and we're getting ready to go forward with them. We understand the importance of the Jocelyn Center and all of that. We'll come back and through the budget and come up with a plan to make that happen as well. I mean, we're tackling these projects one at a time. These other projects have been in the works for years. I'm sorry that these things are being commingled. In retrospect, we probably should not have done this. We should have just gone forward with the project as it is. I'm sorry for the confusion.
Well, and I do have a question about the planning, the reconfiguration of the planning department because with the counter space, because I know we're in the middle of doing a new system upgrade, and that system upgrade will change the way we do business. So I want to make sure we're not putting the cart before the horse as far as we're not redesigning a counter that may change, the processes may change completely when we implement a new system.
It's part of that effort. That is part of that effort. Sam can chime in on that, but it's definitely those two are linked. So.
Okay, any other council discussion on this item? Okay, so we've got a commitment from staff to figure out a way to get the Jocelyn Center bathrooms done in an expedited manner. And what is before us is a resolution, adopting a resolution and a motion to authorize the city manager to execute all contracts. So are we at a good place where we can continue? Do we have someone like to make well, I guess that's it. We'll just, city attorney will read the resolution by title only unless someone is opposed to that at this point.
It doesn't require unanimous agreement to move forward, does it?
I don't even think we, no, it doesn't actually, yeah. Okay, city attorney, why don't you read the resolution by title only and then we'll take a voice vote.
Okay. Sorry, I gotta open that up. Say resolution of the city of El Segundo approving the cancellation of community development block grant project number 602062-19 Jocelyn Senior Center Americans with Disability Act compliant restroom facilities improvement project and authorize the implementation of a new CDBG project entitled City Hall Americans with Disabilities Act compliant restroom facilities improvement project. Ready for adoption?
Okay, Madam Clerk, would you please take a voice vote? Oh, I'm sorry, we need a motion. Who would like to make a motion?
Giroux, motion to approve.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Boyles will second. Madam Clerk, please take a voice vote.
Yes. Councilmember Giroux,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
No.
Councilmember Perstuck,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel,
Yes.
Mayor
Yes.
Boyles. So your motion passes 3-2.
Thank you. Okay, stating your last name, if someone would like to make a motion authorizing the city manager to execute all contracts in a form approved by the city attorney with the Los Angeles County Development Authority.
I guess I'll go again. Giroux, so moved.
Thank you, Lance. All right, do we have a second?
Pimentel, second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please take a voice vote?
Yes. Councilmember Giroux,
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel,
Nope.
Councilmember Perstuck,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Yeah.
That was a yes, sir?
Yeah.
Thank you. And Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
Okay, it passes with a 3-2 vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, next up we have staff presentation 13, receive and file an update on the city's efforts toward meeting state affordable housing mandates, including RHNA, which is the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, and the housing element. And Mr. Mitnick will report on this item. I believe Sam Lee. I don't see Scott. So, Mr. Lee, how are you?
Sorry about that. Sorry about
Scott, you
that.
back? That's okay. So, should we turn it over to Sam?
Yes, please. We're having some technical problems in my office here. I apologize. Yeah, that's Tim Lee.
All good. All good. All right, I see Sam. So, Sam, take it away, please.
I'm also having technical difficulties.
We can see the presentation, Sam, just letting you know.
You can see the presentation?
Mhm.
Not sure enough on my screen. Okay, thank you. So good evening, Mayor Boyles, members of the council. Thank you for this opportunity to update the council on city's efforts towards housing. The item before you tonight is only for informational. No decisions are being asked of you tonight. Each of these items will be brought back with more details in future council meetings, and the public will have opportunities to provide their input in the future. As an overview, this presentation will cover what the problem we're trying to solve is, what's the plan to solve that problem, and why it's important to El Segundo. From there, I'll discuss where we are in the overall process and end the presentation with what the council and the public can expect in year 2021. So what's the problem? In short, California hasn't kept up with housing needs for decades. This chart shows number of housing units that have been added in California from 1967 to 2015. The yellow bar indicates new single-family homes, and blue bar shows new multifamily units that have been added. After the housing boom in the late 1980s, there was a significant drop in new housing in the 90s. Coincidentally, El Segundo's general plan was updated in 1992, and new zoning standards reduced the number of new housing units for decades. There was an uptick in single-family homes leading up to the Great Recession, but overall, there's been a downward trend. This is another chart. It shows household income versus rent over several decades. The red line represents rent, and it's been gradually increasing. The orange bar is the household income. It's actually been decreasing. This imbalance of rent versus income has created a growing gap. So Californians are spending more percentage of their income on housing. So high cost of housing has had an economic impact. Lack of housing was one of the top reasons for businesses for leaving. Businesses are leaving the state. We've heard of Torrance losing Toyota to Texas. And over the years, businesses interested in El Segundo have indicated employee housing as one of the major hurdles to moving residents, moving their businesses to El Segundo. As the economic engine of South Bay, El Segundo may benefit from additional housing, not only in El Segundo, but in the area. So what's the plan? How does it impact El Segundo? The plan comes to us as a state mandate. Their goal is to add 3.5 million housing units. The state works through Southern California Association of Governments, known as SCAG, who pushes down housing goals to the counties and cities. This allocation is known as the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, also known as RHNA. Cities are mandated to develop a housing plan called Housing Element, and it must be certified by the state. For the next housing cycle, SCAG, which represents 6 counties and 191 cities in Southern California region, is mandated by the state to add 1.3 million housing units in the next decade. So what does this mean for South Bay? And more importantly, what does it mean for El Segundo? El Segundo's new state mandate is to add 491 housing units in the next 10 years. That's over 600% increase from 69, which was our number in the last housing cycle. A significant increase indeed, but not nearly as much as other cities. So how can we achieve this lofty goal? Clearly, there's no silver bullet. There needs to be a multifaceted approach. For guidance, we looked at the city's strategic plan. The plan says, go look for revenue sources such as grant opportunities. It also says, identify areas in the city that's appropriate for housing, including senior housing. It also says, reimagine downtown, develop a vision and improve downtown and support its businesses. It says, conduct a study of repurposing of City Hall. And finally, it says, promote community engagement and update the housing element per state mandate. With the strategic plan in hand, staff developed a strategy. We went out and obtained 2 grants totaling $225,000. With this funding, staff hired a consultant to gather the city's housing inventory, study zoning standards, and look for opportunities where more housing can be added. We went out for a request for qualification to find an affordable housing service provider partner to best use the $5.3 million received from D.R. Horton. We went out for request for proposal to find a consultant to rewrite the downtown specific plan. And we also went out for requests for qualifications to find a partner for the Civic Center to redevelopment. Staff is anticipating a huge public outreach effort in the next 6 to 12 months and to comply with the state housing element mandate. What's tricky is that these efforts are all working together and are closely related and need a lot of coordination. Very much like, it's really like pieces of a puzzle. Most issues are interrelated and work together to meet our mandated goals. Through it all, public's voice will be a key ingredient in the success of these programs. We're working with the city's communication team to develop, manage, and coordinate information to and from the public. So where are we in the process? RFQ for the Affordable Housing Service Provider was released on September 3rd. RFP for the Downtown Specific Plan went out on October 14th. RFQ for the Civic Center redevelopment was released on October 18th. And I'm happy to report that there has been tremendous interest from companies and developers alike that want to work with El Segundo in the future. On November 17th, we received responses from 13 respectable companies that are interested in partnering with us on an affordable housing program. On December 7th, we received responses from 12 capable planning companies interested in helping staff rewrite the downtown specific plan. And lastly, on December 16th, we received responses from 10 great developers interested in assisting us with the Civic Center redevelopment project. I'm going to end this presentation with what you can expect in 2021. And there's a lot here. Affordable Housing Service Provider recommendation from staff for exclusive negotiation is coming to council on February 2nd, next meeting. A housing inventory zoning study standard study will officially kick off in February. The Civic Center request for vision and approach from developers is scheduled to begin in February. This will take several months. The downtown specific plan consultant selection will be coming to council in March. Public workshop on housing will begin in March and will go through the summer. There will be several public workshops on the downtown specific plan in the summer and will go on for months. Civic Center letter of intent with the developer and negotiations will occur in July, and staff's recommendation to council will be in August. The new housing element will be coming to council in October. And if all goes well, state will certify the new housing element in December. That concludes staff's recommendation. We'll be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Great job, Sam. I'm looking to my colleagues for raised hands. I'm not seeing any. Am I missing anyone? No. Okay, and this is just a file, receive and file. So is anyone opposed to receiving? Oh yeah, sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, please.
I just wanted to add something that having a clear roadmap like this, in having it in our back pocket, is something that we use quite a bit when we talk at every level. I know there is a significant position with us and our neighboring cities and colleagues when we talk to the state delegations. That look, we understand that housing is an issue. We have a plan for housing. We understand our interests are served by keeping housing as a viable element in our city. So these things, and I just, as a point of order, I want to thank the staff for it, because we lean on the fact that we have a plan, and it's good to have a good plan to lean on, as opposed to saying we have a plan. What is it? Give me 2 minutes. You know, we can lean on this, and I think it's very important to maintain a credible point, and I know our sister cities are doing the same.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And I would just add that several of us on council, if not all of us, are lobbying very hard to get some realistic state bills become laws that are more focused on incentives as opposed to cram down mandates. I know Chris has been working on that with one organization. I'm on the SCAG now, the regional council, which actually sets the reading numbers by staff. So we're hitting at this all fronts because we'd like to have some control of the matter. And Sam, the thing that I haven't gotten a good response from anyone in Sacramento or even at SCAG at this point is why there's still such a rush to add the homes when, as you said, many businesses are leaving town. The new norm, especially for technology and creative companies, is to work remotely. There's been a lot of evidence to suggest that there's been a huge exodus out of California. Do you think, are you hearing anything out there or seeing anything, Sam, that would suggest that they might temper these numbers a bit next year when there's?
You know, I haven't heard any information from that perspective, but to add to your thoughts, you know, when you started this discussion, the concept of the 3.5 million and the 1.3 million from the Southern California has always been a bit of a mystery for us. But you know, the state and SCAG, they go through a process, and you know, at some point, the cities have no choice but to come up and develop a plan. Could that change in the future? Yeah, you know, maybe possibly, especially with COVID and what may be happening in the business in the future. But right now, there's so much coordination and effort that's needed to try to make this work in 2021. That's what staff is focusing on.
Yeah, I mean, I forget how many members in SCAG. I know it's 4 or 5 counties. I can't think of any city members that are in favor of the numbers that they've been given for RENA, and many filed petitions to dispute it. I know we chose not to for good reason, but all right, thanks, Sam. I appreciate that. So any other comments from anyone? Okay, that's a receive and file. I don't see anyone opposed. Thank you again, Sam.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have item 14, adopt a resolution providing for the issuance and sale of taxable pension obligation bonds and authorizing the execution of a trust agreement, a validation action, and other related matters, and authorize the city manager and chief financial officer to take all administrative and budgetary actions necessary to perform the bond issuance. Mr. Mitnick, who will report on this item?
Our Chief Financial Officer, Joe Lilio, will take care of that.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah, for some reason, I'm seeing a blank screen except for myself, so hopefully...
we see you.
Okay, great. I am going to bring the presentation up. Hopefully that works.
Yep, it's loading.
Great.
We got it.
Okay, also, I just want to confirm, Mona, is Mr. Don Field and Mark Young.
Well, I have a question. I have a Mark who is identified as an attendee. I have sent him an email. I don't have a hand raised. If he could raise his hand, or do you want me to, I'll move him over, but I haven't gotten a response.
I'll text him. I think we can just move along, and I'll text him and tell him he needs to raise his hand if it's him. Okay. Okay, so good evening, Mayor Boyles, Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel, and distinguished council members. So assisting me tonight on this item, I'd like to introduce them, is the city's bond counsel, Mr. Don Field from Orrick, and then the city's municipal advisor, Mr. Mark Young from K&N Public Finance. So the resolution being presented tonight to City Council authorizes staff and bond counsel to one, submit the necessary documents to the Los Angeles County Superior Court to start the judicial validation process. Don will get into what that is in a subsequent slide, as well as approve the following. So one, the issuance of bonds in an amount not to exceed And what we're asking here tonight is 100% of the UAL. So that's not saying we're going to issue the bonds at 100%, but an amount not to exceed for the judicial validation process. And then sometime after the judicial validation process is completed and we have the preliminary official statement, we'll come back to council and ask them, council, do you want to issue the bonds at 100%, 95%, or some other amount? So for tonight, we're asking 100% not to exceed for the purposes of the judicial validation process. If we do put a lower amount, we will not be able to exceed that amount. So that's why we are asking for 100% here tonight. So the city's unfunded accrued liability will be included in this amount. The underwriter's discount or original discount on the bonds and the cost of issuance will also be included. The true cost of interest on the initial bond series, here again, we're asking in the judicial validation process not to exceed 4%. So again, right now, the current rate that's estimated on our bonds, again, this is taxable amount, taxable bonds, is 2.72%. So basically 2.7% is the amount that's estimated right now. We are projecting the bonds will be issued in the marketplace sometime in early to mid-June. Now, we all know interest rates fluctuate. And unlike a mortgage, if you were to go to refinance your own personal mortgage, you can lock a rate in. Fortunately, you can't do that with bonds. That's not the way it works. When you actually go to issue them in the marketplace, that's the rate at the time that we have to take. And we're expecting, again, to be at that 2.72%. However, we have to put an amount in the judicial validation process that says that not to exceed 4%. It could be some other amount, but that's the amount we're recommending to put in the court process. And then the initial bonds shall mature no later than July 1st, 2040. So it's going to be a 19-year amortization period. That's excellent. Actually knocks off 1 year compared to the CalPERS amortization period. And two, a draft form of the trust agreement, which is attached to your packets as attachment number 2. The total bond issuance is currently estimated to be $152 million, and that does include all the issuance costs and some of those other items as well, in addition to the $151 million at 100% of the UAL. So the trust agreement identifies the duties and responsibilities of the trustee and establishes the terms and conditions for the bond issuance, as well as the payment and principal interest of the bonds. And again, as I mentioned before, asking for a 19-year amortization period. We would have biannual payments, so interest-only payments due by January 1st of each year. So the first one would be due January 1st of 2021, and then interest and principal due every July 1st. So upon City Council approval of this resolution, 2 concurrent processes will begin. First, the validation process, which is the court process, which is expected to take at least 90 days. Some of our sister cities in the Bay Area have gone through this already, and they've been taking about 90 days. So hopefully that will be the same with us. At the same time, staff and consultants will prepare other required financing documents and the preliminary official statement and submit financing to credit agencies for a credit rating on the bonds. And this would be the first time that the city is actually receiving a credit rating, which is a great thing. We're anticipating in the packet that you see before you tonight, a AA+. We will definitely shoot for AAA, but being first-time bond issuance in the marketplace, that's not always possible. Okay, so I would like to turn it over to Mr. Fields, the city's bond counsel, to discuss the validation process.
Great, thank you, and good evening. The validation process is the concept is this: there's a constitutional limit on cities, counties, and school districts in California not to enter into obligations beyond the current year's revenues. There are certain exceptions to that constitutional requirement, and one relates to obligations that are imposed by law. And so the pension obligations that the city has entered into are considered obligations imposed by law. And what the city was actually proposing to do is just change the form of those obligations from the existing current contract with PERS to refinance those into a form of a bond. Now, we go to the validation process because the judicial decisions relating to pension obligation bonds have not made it up through the courts to the appellate and Supreme Court level in the state of California. So the validation process allows us to go to court and ask the court to give a judgment saying that if these bonds were issued, they would be valid obligations imposed by law and not subject to the limitations in the constitutional debt limit. So that's what we will be asking the court to do, is to simply validate those as obligations imposed by law so that the city would be ensured when it issues the bonds that there would be no challenge to the validity of them. There's a process that it goes by. That process has been a little bit unpredictable during COVID, but we expect that we would be able to file a complaint for the validation next week and then receive a default judgment in April. There will be a 30-day appeal period after that. And then we would be in a position to issue the bonds if all goes as planned. Are there any questions?
No, I don't see any.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
I'd like to turn over now to Mr. Mark Young.
Okay, Joe. I just want to give you guys a quick market update. We talked about this months ago, that every time we would come back to the city council, we would tell you how the market has been moving and the direction of interest rates and how it affects the pension obligation bonds. So with the election and with the what appears to be a lot of stimulus and a lot of borrowing, Treasury market has moved off. So the Treasury benchmark has moved up about 10 basis points, and the 30-year Treasury has moved up about 12 basis points since we last spoke. And that's based on macroeconomics and the election. However, the Treasury, the taxable spreads of taxable municipals have tightened. So we're actually borrowing at tighter spreads in interest rates relative to the last time we spoke. So next slide, please. So again, you've seen this slide. We're using a base case scenario, which is we're going to prepay 100% of the UAL. We're going to do level debt service based on the original amortization of your UAL. Joe, can you pop it open?
I disappeared.
Oh, okay. But basically, we're at about 61 million PV savings, about 40%, 2.7%. So we're exceeding the levels that we talked to you about a couple months ago. But what we want to do is every time we come and talk to you, so you see it now, you're approving the validation. We're going to come back in February, maybe March, and we're going to talk about where we are in a UAL policy and the like. We're going to keep bringing you back and show you what the market's doing and the level of savings. But the direction's moving well. And we will come back to you with different scenarios in terms of potentially shortening the amortization of the UAL and other things. But it's looking really good. Back to you, Joe.
Okay, Council, I just wanted to show you this slide again. I know you've seen this in prior presentations, but the blue bars represent the payments, the annual payments to PERS per our current amortization with PERS. The red bars represent the bond payments, the taxable bond payments, if this ultimately gets approved. And you can see it's level debt service all the way across. And again, saving with the current interest rate environment, about $61 million present value over the next 19 years. The next steps, if approved tonight, there's a series of judicial validation processes that take us through April. We'd come back in February to approve the city's UAL pension policy. First draft of the preliminary official statement sometime in February or mid-February, early March. And some other key dates, the credit rating review with the credit agencies sometime in mid to late April. We would receive our credit rating sometime in early May. Council approving the official statement and bond purchase agreement in May. And then pricing of the bonds early June, and then out to market in mid-June. And that concludes the presentation. Does council have any questions they'd like to ask about this?
I am not seeing anyone. Oh, yeah, Councilor Drew.
Thanks, Joe. Question. Right now, I know we're talking about just, we got to put it at, want to put it 100% because you can go lower, but you can't go higher. When that final decision comes before us, when those final decision comes before us, are we going to know what the locked in interest rate is? Or do we know the interest rate, then make the decision? Do we make the decision, then know the interest rate? How's that going to work out?
As Mr. Young stated earlier in this presentation, we're going to come back on a pretty frequent basis to update council on the market rate environment. And Mark, you probably can speak better than I on this topic, but interest rates are, the Fed is anticipating to keep interest rates pretty low for the next several years. So any increases that we may or may not see should not be too significant between now and the issuance date in June. But Mark, do you have anything to add?
Happy to add to it, Joe. So Councilmember, great question. So we're going to be coming back to you and we talked about this back in November. Every time that we come to you, we're going to give you market rates. So we did it tonight and the numbers look really good. Treasury rates went up, but credit spreads kind of went down. We're going to come back to you maybe late February with a UAL policy. We want to talk to you about that, and we're going to give you market rates at that point in time. And if you approve it tonight, yeah, you have that 5%, you have that 4% TIC. I know it sounds high, but we have to do it to be going through with the bond documents. We'll come back in February, kind of give you an idea of where we're going. I think in March, we're going to come back with ideas of how do you want to redo your amortization? Do you want to shorten it? Because right now you've got miscellaneous, it's kind of short. You've got safety. So we're going to come back with lots of different, policy decisions. And we're going to tell you at that point in time, what does the market look like? So all the points that we're going through, we're going to be showing you where the market is and giving you opportunities to make decisions. But probably what will happen is in May, we're going to be ready. We're going to see what's going to happen in the market. You will have seen a lot of different decisions in terms of how you want to amortize. And at that point in time, you will be making a decision.
Okay, so you're saying May.
100%. Do we want to do, what do we want to do? You'll be doing that in probably April or May.
Okay, so again, my question is simply when we make that decision, is the rate locked in or is it still going to fluctuate? That's the only question.
Yeah, when you make the decision to approve, You approve it within parameters. We go to the market. You have a week or two. The market can go up or down. You're giving your city manager, the mayor, the treasurer, the decision to make a decision. Okay, we're good. But when you approve at that point in time with the POS, you have about 2 weeks, and then you're exposed to market risk.
Yeah, Councilmember Drew, there is no locking in like your mortgage.
Okay, that's all I was looking for.
Yeah, there's no such thing in municipal bond space. But
right, so you got about a 2 week where you're holding your breath a little bit.
Yes.
Okay.
To follow on to Councilmember Drew's question, are there limit orders on bonds or anything similar to equities, or no? Or is that just we would set the range at council as a policy decision, and if you could not execute within a certain bond price, the order would not go forward?
It's a great question. So when we come to you to approve the preliminary official statement, with that resolution, there'll be parameters. So there'll be a maximum TIC, there'll be a maximum, coupons, interest rates, and the like. You will be giving discretion to probably the mayor, the treasurer, the city manager, and the finance director to be able to approve the provisions, the coupons, the interest rates. So once you approve going forward, it's about a 3-day process. You go out and you get indications of interest or spreads on treasuries, 2 to 3 day process. And then what happens is you have people, all your investors coming in, and they, hopefully, we've got 10 times oversubscription. People want to buy the bonds. We set the spreads to treasuries. And about 2 hours later, we set the coupons. It's a very competitive process. And I'm sure El Segundo is going to get very, very competitive bids, and we're probably going to see 10 times oversubscription.
Great. So you don't anticipate a situation where we'd have to do tranches because we couldn't get what we wanted. There's no circumstance you can see in the future that would suggest that we would be able to completely fulfill that 100% UAL?
No. Once you decide how you want, if you decide you want 100%, that's close to 150 million, we will go out with those bonds. We will tranche them from 1 year out to, I think you're probably 2040. So we're around 20 years. We will tranche those out, and we will take advantage of the yield curve. So we will tell people, okay, we have these bonds, 150 million out for 20 years, and we're doing spreads to treasuries. So if you're interested, come in and tell us you want them. It's about a 3-day process, and I can assure you, El Segundo is going to get more demand than you ever would expect.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that explanation. Okay. Yep. Good. Mayor Pro Tem.
Question on our bond policy piece. Is that when we would discuss potential guidelines? I know there can't be rules for future councils, but guidelines about how we would pledge certain funds, where we want what our standard OPEB payment that we no longer need to pay. We would say, look, our guideline is to pledge this to our pension obligation bonds. Is that when that would go forward?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel, we're expecting to bring that the second meeting in February to City Council. But that is exactly what that policy is.
Okay. And then just a bit of a reminder that even if we did 100%, that's 100% of our UAL as it was effectively a year ago. Right. It would be 100%, but our UAL number will grow when the current year's announcement is made. So we don't quite have as much risk exposure with 100% because of one of those odd pieces of government speak. 100% won't be 100% by the date of issuance. I would ask that we tie a string around our finger so we make sure that there's no major Fed announcement that will straddle any decision we make and the date of issuance. So that may be a bit crystal ball-y in the future, but you know, if there's room left on your finger for string, Joe, maybe put one on there for that.
Absolutely.
Just one point of clarification on that point is what the city council will be approving is to authorize issuing up to 100% of the UAL at the time of bond issuance. So to the extent that goes up, you would be allowed to issue bonds to pay whatever the current UAL is at the time of bond issuance. And what happens is we go to CalPERS and ask them for an updated valuation as of the time of closing. And then to the extent 100% is desired to be financed, we would be able to issue up to that amount. But the city council can direct the officers of the city to finance a lower amount.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. That's an important change because that number could likely be what we think somewhere around 161. I think at the next reporting day, Joe.
Well, so CalPERS comes up with their annual performance on their portfolio every. They measure it from July 1st through June 30 each year. At June 30, 2020, they came in at an annual rate of 4.7%, which was lower than their discount rate of 7%, the target rate of 7%. So that 2.3 or 230 point basis point difference is the loss. I did speak to our actuary. CalPERS will not have that evaluated until after July 1st of 2021. So if we're issuing the bonds in June, that loss from June 30, 2020 will not be included there yet.
Very well. Thank you very much. And I know that you soft pedaled this a bit in the presentation, but just for people watching at home, unfunded liability is a debt already, and this is just a way of restructuring that debt. And saving $61 million is effectively giving ourselves a year of general fund back, which is a remarkable turn. So with that, I would happily move this approval when it is time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions? I don't see any. Okay. Great presentation, Joe and Mark and Donald. Appreciate that. Okay, let's see. We are going to ask you, Mr. Hensley, to read the resolution by title, if you would, please.
Yes, Mayor and Council. A resolution of the City of El Segundo, California, providing for the issuance of one or more series of City of El Segundo taxable pension obligation bonds and authorizing a trust agreement, a validation action, and other matters relating thereto is ready for adoption.
Thank you, sir. Stating your last name, would someone like to make a motion to adopt the resolution?
Pimentel, so moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Giroux, second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please take a voice vote?
Yes. Councilmember Giroux?
Yes.
Councilmember Nickel?
Aye.
Councilmember Persick?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel?
Yes.
And Mayor Boyles?
Yes.
Okay, resolution passes 5-0.
Okay, next up, we need to authorize a motion. This would authorize the city manager and the chief financial officer to take all administrative and budgetary actions necessary to perform the bond issuance, including negotiation and execution of agreements with Orrick, Herrington, and Sutcliffe LLP for judicial validation proceedings and bond counsel. Straddling Yucca, Carlson, and Ralph for disclosure counsel services, KNN Public Finance to act as municipal advisor, JP Morgan Securities LLC and Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated to mutually act as underwriters, and U.S. Bank National Association to act as trustee. Would someone like to move approval of that?
Nickel.
Pimentel, so moved.
Nickel,
Okay,
second.
thank you. Thank you. So we got Pimentel for the first and Nickel for the second. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please take a voice vote?
Absolutely. Councilmember Giroux,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichol,
Aye.
Councilmember Perstuck,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel,
Aye.
and Mayor Boyles.
Yes.
Okay, pass 5-0.
Great. I want to commend Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel and Councilmember Nichol for their work on the Pension Ad Hoc Committee, picking up where Don Brand and I started a couple of you guys ago, doing a great job. So thank you. And of course, you too, Joe. All right, item 15 is the legislative platform. We're going to postpone that until February 2nd. So there's more to come on that. And let's see. Moving on then to reports from the city clerk, actually.
No report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone on from city treasurer? I don't think so. No? Okay. Councilor Drew.
Yes, I had my LAWA advisory meeting that happened on the 14th. So I just want to give you a little bit of update on that. Basically, they gave us a LAMP project review. As you may or may not know, it's a $5.5 billion project, and it's in full swing. If you've actually been up in that area at all, there's a lot going on right now. So they're moving along pretty well on that. The people mover system is going to have 3 stops outside of the terminal. There's a rental car facility that will be the largest of its kind in the U.S. It will hold 18,000 rental cars. The second stop is at a connect point to the regional transport area on aviation. And the third stop is at a new parking station, which is located about closer to Sepulveda. This structure is expected actually to be completed and operable by the end of this summer. So a new parking area there. The full project is expected to be completed by April of 2023. With the completion of the rental car facility, all rental car shuttles and parking shuttles will actually be removed from the street. So the only access in and out will be, through the LAMP project. So one good thing there is you're starting to get all those buses that will cut you off when you're trying to get into your terminal are going to be gone. One thing, and Mr. Mitnick, please correct me if I'm wrong on this. We asked for an extension on the EIR. They announced it was March 15th was the extension. I know we asked for April 3rd. I don't know what that ended up at.
I believe it was the mid-March date. Mark Hensley, if you're on this still, if that's not correct, please let us know. But I believe I did go back and look, and it was mid-March.
Yeah, I don't have the exact date. I can get that in.
Okay.
We'll follow up. I'll put that on.
As long as we have enough time for it. All right. And the last piece that they share with us is that LAX COVID testing has began on December 31st. Rapid tests are processed on site within 24 hours. The cost is $125. They are located across from Terminal 6, arrival level of Terminal 2, and a departure level at Tom Bradley, and appointments are strongly recommended. And that's all I got from that.
Thank you, Councilmember Giroux. Next up, we have Councilmember Nichol.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask a couple questions of staff, and they don't need to be answered now, but if we can get briefings at the next council meeting, that would be fantastic. First one would be regarding the COVID numbers. There was no discussion tonight as to when we might be able to see businesses reopening. I know that there's a matrix for that, but if we could have an update from our incident management team on when they could potentially see restaurants going back to outdoor dining. I don't know if you spend much time in the downtown like I do, but there are days that are pretty depressing with the just lack of individuals out and about. Second thing, Mr. Mitnick and Mr. Lilio, if you guys can report back to us on where we stand on those budget projections. Mid 2020, we had projections on the budget and what our lack of revenue would be based upon certain restarts of the economy. Now we've seen a restart and now a stall, and we're not sure when it's going to start again. And so where TOT numbers are, what we're tracking, and what the financial outlook could be for us when it comes budget time for midsummer 2021. I think just an update on that would be great, because that would potentially help us in any decisions that we make between now and then. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Council Member Perstuck.
Yes, I just want to thank Chief Donovan for all his efforts on the COVID initiative, especially trying to get the vaccinations to our fire and our police, as well as hopefully getting it for our Park Vista residents. I would like to ask staff to look at working with the Joslin Center and the members of the senior community to ensure that they have a ride to the forum if they need to go to get a ride to get the vaccination. So somehow give them some opportunity to get to the location for the vaccination. So if we could somehow work with the Joslin Center on that, that'd be great. That's it. And Happy New Year to everybody.
Great idea, Carol. Thank you. All right, Mayor Pro Tem Pimentel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the COG transportation meetings, we good news to report with the $5.5 million going to the Park Place extension, and those funds is progressing. Again, that's not our funds, that's repurposing of Metro funds and Measure R funding. LAWA will present to the COG at your meeting there for the Board of Governors and Board of Directors meeting. We made known through the Transportation Committee some of the concerns that the City of El Segundo has for the region writ large and for the city in specific moving into that. We had a contract cities housing meeting and legislative brief that featured the delegations from most of the area. And on that, we made clear some of the concerns we have about the upcoming legislative agenda. And some of the area legislators asked us, well, what are the proposals coming from the cities? So rather than just saying no, there are some yeses. And we made known that we'd sent them some proposals before, and I think they're relooking at those. And some of those, and I think that some of my colleagues remember, our ideas that with these RHNA numbers, can cities trade them back and forth and exchange them with their proximate neighbors? Are there things that could curtail abusive use of CEQA legislation that shuts down some promising developments or housing things? And that tied into a Veterans Council meeting today that had the congressional delegations on it, where the Veterans Administration, principally out of Santa Monica, is trying to use immediate supportive housing for unsheltered homeless in those historic buildings. Some of the challenges they have is because those are historic buildings, they don't satisfy housing community development's density requirements. So they're able to get federal funds for repurposing these buildings for unsheltered homeless, but they can't get state funds because they're not dense enough, despite the fact they're historic buildings. It's a really novel use of some of these buildings. They're moving quickly to get some of these folks into supportive housing, but running into to some of the tyranny of good intentions when it comes to California legislation versus federal legislation. So that was a bit difficult to hear. You had to kind of swallow hard. Also, Sanitation District 5 down in Carson is plowing ahead with their recycled water. I know that is something that is near and dear to a lot of us because we see the success that West Basin has. And even though we see upwards of 250 million gallons a day go out in Hyperion, they're seeing 260 going out in Sanitation District. So repurposing fractions of that water to recharge groundwater is significant, and it represents a success for their package and demonstration unit, but it's interesting that they are years behind what we're doing up here, but progress nonetheless. And that's all.
Thank you, sir. Well, it's a great start to what's going to be a monumental year. And Scott Nickel, I'll go to you right after this, okay? I saw your note. Yeah. Man, just this week alone, we got news that Beyond Meat, one of our shining stars in El Segundo, is moving into 888 Douglas. We knew they'd been working on that for quite some time. Huge for us, over 250,000 square feet. And the fact that they continue to invest in this town. I was actually on the phone with Ethan Brown earlier today, and he continues to be a big fan of our city. L'Oreal also expanding into that facility. Top Golf after, 8 years, 9 years, whatever it's taken us to get that thing across the line. Huge for us. Space Force and everything that's happening with the LA Air Force Base and SMC, soon to be SSC. And then when I look at tonight's agenda, tackling housing, pensions, which are our most important financial issue that we have as a city, We have some really big things on the horizon for 2021. So it's going to be an incredible year. I'm really looking forward to it. I get excited just looking at what's ahead of us. One thing I might ask, and I don't know that we've done this before, Scott, but now that we have Martha on board, especially Guzman Hurtado, is an analysis of the governor's budget. And this one was quite interesting, actually. So it would be good to have a summary of the governor's budget, because that certainly affects all municipalities and counties, and have someone present that to us. And I don't think it's too late at this point either. So that would be an ask of mine. That's all I have. I'm going to turn it back over to Councilmember Nickel.
Yes, sorry, I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity to publicly wish my nephew, my number one nephew, happy birthday. Today's his 16th birthday. I wish you all the best. I know your father is watching, so he'll tell you that I said happy birthday, because he is an avid city council meeting watcher. So Braden Biggerstaff, happy birthday, buddy. Sorry I could not be there to drop off your gift tonight, because I am here with my colleagues at city council, but happy birthday. Thank you, Mr.
Happy
Mayor.
birthday. I think you might have been in co-op with my daughter, right? That's awesome, man. Time flies. Whew. Thanks for doing that, Scott. All right, Mr. Mitnick, back to you.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you. I'll talk about the February 2nd council meeting in a moment, but by way of follow-up, we'll work on the, I'm sorry?
Mark?
We'll work on the items that we talked about. And again, on the Jocelyn Center restrooms, I do apologize for the confusion there. We will, through the CIP for next year, restore that funding. So I do apologize for that, and I will personally follow up with each of you accordingly. For the next meeting on February 2nd, one of the items we have right now, looks like 5 staff presentations we're working on. One of them will be the budget. So Councilmember Nickel, we will have a summary of the year end for last year and the status of the first quarter of this fiscal year. So we'll give you the latest, greatest budget information in terms of revenues and our expenditures. And also we'll weave in, at the mayor's request, a summary of the state budget and where that's at, the governor's, the summary of the governor's budget. So we'll have that for you. We are looking at the affordable housing services provider recommendation. You heard that earlier from Mr. Lee. We will have the legislative platform update, and council, just as a reminder, we're asking each of you to reach out to Martha, our PIO, and our legislative affairs manager with your thoughts on the proposed legislative platform. We'll fine tune it to make sure we've got everybody's input. Happy to discuss that further as well. We'll also have the Net Promoter Community Survey report. We have that feedback that's in, and Mr. Mayor, I will talk to you about that. And then we're going to give an update on citywide broadband service. Multiple council members have been raising this issue. We hear about it from residents. We hear about it from small businesses. We will give you an update on where we are on this issue. We'll have representatives from Spectrum, AT&T, and possibly Verizon available to answer your questions and questions from the community. That's it by way of city manager follow-up. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mitnick, can I ask you just with regards to the broadband presentation, if there's time allowing for it, could you make that more encompassing so it's all technologies for distributing broadband as opposed to just what's typically available through the traditional channels? There's a whole bunch of new technology out there, directive dishes, off buildings. Elon Musk has a balloon program that he's launching through satellites.
Sure.
Yeah, let's just cast the net wide, please.
We will. Absolutely, sir. All right, thank you.
All right, I think we are, city attorney. Sorry, I skipped you, Mark. What have you got for us this evening?
It's nothing this evening. Thank you very much. Happy New Year, everyone.
I knew that. That's why I skipped you, Mark. I kid. Okay, that's all we have. We are officially adjourned. Everyone have a great evening. Thank you.